He abandoned his black wife and newborn for his mistress, a girl half his age. But when a mysterious billionaire walked into that restaurant, everything shattered. The girl he chose, not his lover, his daughter, and the wife he betrayed, she was about to become untouchable. My name is Daniel Ashford, and I'm about to tell you the story of how I destroyed everything beautiful in my life, only to watch it flourish without me. I wasn't born wealthy. I clawed my way up from nothing in the luxury real estate business. Every property I touched turned to gold. I was good at what I did, exceptional even. The kind of man who could walk into a room and command attention without saying a word. I built an empire from the ground up, and I wore that accomplishment like armor. I thought success meant I deserved everything I wanted. I was wrong, but I wouldn't understand that until it was far too late. 12 years before everything fell apart, I met the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. Her name was Victoria. She was a renowned architect, brilliant in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. While I moved money and properties around, she designed spaces that changed how people lived. She had this light about her, this quiet confidence that made you believe in her vision immediately. When she walked into a room, people didn't just notice, they listened. She had substance, depth, a mind that could match mine in every way that mattered. We got married on a Saturday in October. It was perfect because she made it that way. Everything Victoria touched became beautiful. Our daughter was born on a freezing January morning. I'll never forget that moment, holding this tiny human that we created together, watching Victoria's face as she held our child for the first time. I remember thinking I had everything: a successful business, a wife who was not just my partner, but my inspiration, and a daughter who represented all our hopes for the future. On paper, I had won at life, but something shifted inside me. I didn't notice it at first. It was subtle, like a shadow creeping across a room as the sun sets. Victoria threw herself into motherhood and her career simultaneously. She was designing a major sustainable housing project while recovering from childbirth, managing late-night feedings while taking Zoom calls with international clients. I watched her do the impossible every single day, and instead of admiring her, instead of stepping in to support her, I felt something darker. I felt invisible. Here was this extraordinary woman, consumed by obligations, and somewhere in my twisted mind, I began to resent her for it. I convinced myself that she had chosen everything else over me, that her ambition was a betrayal of our marriage, that I deserved more attention, more appreciation, more of her energy. That's when she walked into my life. I met her at a charity gala. Her name was Sienna. She was 24 years old, working as an event coordinator, and she was beautiful in the way that catches a room's breath. More importantly, she looked at me like I hung the moon. Every word I spoke, she treated like gold. Every story I told about my business deals, she listened to with wide eyes and genuine fascination. She laughed at my jokes, really laughed. Not the tired, distracted laugh Victoria had started giving me. Sienna made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in months. I told myself I wasn't crossing any lines. We were just friends. We ran into each other at events. We had lunch to discuss business opportunities. These were the lies I whispered to myself in the dark. But it was more than that. It was an emotional affair that burned hotter than any physical betrayal. She fed my ego like it was starving, and I was ravenous. She would text me things like, "You're so impressive, and I've never met anyone like you." She made me feel like the man I thought I was before marriage and fatherhood had complicated things. She offered an escape from the reality that I was becoming invisible in my own home. Not because Victoria didn't love me, but because I had stopped showing up. The texts became more frequent, the lunches became longer. I started lying about where I was going. I'd tell Victoria I had business calls, late meetings, important clients to wine and dine. She never questioned me. She just nodded, kissed me on the cheek, and went back to feeding our daughter or reviewing architectural blueprints. That lack of resistance, that trust, it made the lying easier. Worse, it made me feel justified. If she loved me, wouldn't she fight for me? What I didn't understand was that Victoria was fighting every day. Just not for me. She was fighting for us. She was fighting to build something that would secure our family's future. She was fighting against her own exhaustion to be present for our daughter, to be present for her work, to be present for a marriage that was quietly falling apart because only one person was trying to hold it together. One evening, Victoria found my phone. I remember the exact moment her face changed. We were in our kitchen, and she was holding my phone with trembling hands. Her eyes scanned the screen, reading messages from Sienna that were unmistakably intimate, unmistakably romantic. The color drained from her face. I watched the moment the woman I loved realized that the man she married had chosen betrayal. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, but something far worse. Disappointment, deep, soul-crushing disappointment. She set the phone down on the counter and walked upstairs. That silence was louder than any argument could ever be. We didn't recover from that moment. I tried to convince her it meant nothing. I tried to convince her that Sienna was just a distraction, that Victoria was the one I truly wanted. But she knew better. She knew that you don't accidentally build an emotional connection with someone. You choose it every single day, with every text, every secret meeting, every lie you tell the person sleeping beside you. Victoria asked me to go to therapy. She asked me to choose her. She asked me to choose us. And I looked at this woman who had given me everything, her youth, her brilliance, her trust, and I told her I needed to figure out who I was. I needed to find myself. I needed space. Those words were death sentences, and we both knew it. Within 3 months, I had moved into a penthouse apartment with Sienna. I had hired a lawyer to make the divorce as quick and as cheap as possible. I had walked away from my marriage, from my daughter, from the woman who had believed in me when I believed in myself. The cruelest part? I didn't even have the decency to fight for shared custody. I told my lawyers to make it simple. Victoria got primary custody, and I paid minimal child support, just enough to say I was fulfilling my obligations, but nowhere near enough to truly provide for my daughter. I convinced myself that this was what Victoria wanted, that she would be happier without me dragging her down, that I was doing her a favor by stepping aside. I was giving myself permission to abandon my responsibilities by pretending it was mercy. Living with Sienna was nothing like I imagined. Within weeks, the cracks started showing. She wanted everything: designer clothes, luxury vacations, expensive jewelry. She wanted me to introduce her to powerful people, to take her to exclusive events, to parade her around like a trophy. She was on her phone constantly, always looking at something, always comparing herself to other women online. When I couldn't provide enough attention or resources, she became cold. She would flirt with other men at parties right in front of me, just to remind me that I was replaceable. And the worst part? I realized that she had never actually cared about me, not for a single moment. She had been using me as a stepping stone. She was networking through me, trying to climb social ladders I didn't even know existed. Every moment of affection had been a performance. Every smile was calculated. I had destroyed my family, my marriage, my integrity for a woman who saw me as nothing more than a useful resource. Meanwhile, my business was suffering. I was distracted, bitter, and increasingly isolated. Former business associates stopped taking my calls. People I'd worked with for years suddenly had other priorities. I was becoming toxic, and the industry I dominated was quietly pushing me out. I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. People can sense when you're rotting from the inside. But Victoria was doing something extraordinary. She threw herself into her work with a ferocity I'd never seen before. While I was drowning in self-pity and failed romance, she was designing spaces that changed communities. Her sustainable housing project won award after award. International firms started recruiting her. She became a voice in urban development, a woman who could see what cities needed before they understood it themselves. She was thriving in a way that had nothing to do with me, or my presence, or my approval. Our daughter was thriving too. I saw photos sometimes, glimpses of her at birthday parties, at school events, at family gatherings. Victoria had surrounded her with love and stability. My daughter was growing into a confident, intelligent young girl who had everything she needed, everything except a father. And honestly, she was better off without the man I had become. Victoria never said anything bitter about me to our daughter. That's what haunted me most. She never poisoned the well. She simply let the truth speak for itself through her actions and her character. She showed our daughter what strength looked like, what dignity looked like, what it meant to keep moving forward even when the world had broken your heart. Then came the night that changed everything. I was attending a charity gala. It was one of the few events where I still maintained social standing, though it was slipping. I went to these things out of habit now, clinging to the ghost of relevance. Sienna was beside me, looking stunning in a dress I'd paid for, already scanning the room for wealthier men to impress. That's when he walked in. Even from across the room, I could feel his presence. There are certain people who command space just by existing in it. He was older than me, probably in his late 50s, with an air of quiet authority that made everyone else in the room seem small. He was the billionaire philanthropist everyone whispered about, the kind of man who could reshape cities with his vision, who funded transformative projects with the casual confidence of someone who had more money than he could ever spend. He wasn't alone. A young woman walked beside him, and something about her made me stop breathing. I knew her face. I knew it intimately because I had seen it grow up. The young woman beside the billionaire was my daughter. But it wasn't my daughter. It was a version of her I'd never met. She was older, more polished, radiating confidence and intelligence. She was introducing herself to people as his heiress, as his biological daughter. My blood turned to ice. The billionaire took the stage later that evening, and as he spoke about his latest initiative, I felt the full weight of my choices crash down on me. He was talking about a sustainable housing project, my Victoria's sustainable housing project. He had been funding her work all along. He believed in her vision. He was investing in her future. And then he said something that hollowed me out completely. I've had the privilege of meeting extraordinary individuals who remind me what it means to have integrity, he said, and his eyes swept across the room. I followed his gaze and I realized he was looking directly at me. And I've had the privilege of meeting individuals who remind me what it means to be empty. Those lessons are equally valuable. After the gala, he approached me. His voice was calm, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. I know who you are, he said. I've been watching you for some time now. I've been watching what you abandoned, and I've been watching what that remarkable woman has built without you. My mouth went dry. I couldn't form words. Your daughter is extraordinary, he continued. Your ex-wife is extraordinary. I have the privilege of supporting both of them, and they don't need you. They never needed you. They were always going to be fine. Then he turned to leave, and he took my daughter with him. She looked at me with recognition, but there was no warmth in it. Just acknowledgement of a stranger who happened to share her DNA, but nothing else that mattered. Sienna disappeared from my life that same night. I watched her abandon me without a second glance the moment she realized the billionaire was unimpressed by her presence. She wasn't interested in a man who was becoming irrelevant. She moved on to her next target, her next stepping stone, and I never heard from her again. That's when the full scope of my destruction became clear. I had sacrificed everything for someone who had never existed. I had chosen illusion over reality, fantasy over substance, and I was left with nothing. The fallout was swift and merciless. Word spread through my industry about what I'd become. My business began to crumble. Deals fell through. Investors pulled out. Within 18 months, I had filed for bankruptcy. I went from commanding rooms to being someone people pitied. I became the cautionary tale nobody wanted to discuss at dinner parties. I tried to reach out to Victoria. I sent emails asking for forgiveness. I told her I understood now, that I had learned my lesson, that I wanted to be present in our daughter's life. She responded once, with a kindness that somehow made it hurt more. I forgave you years ago, she wrote, not for you, but for myself. I needed to let go of the resentment so I could heal. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. You made your choices, Daniel. I've made mine. We're both at peace now. I just ask that you respect the life I've built and the daughter I've raised. There was no anger in those words, no bitterness, just closure, finality. She had moved on completely, and there was no bridge back to what we lost. I see photos sometimes. Victoria at architectural conferences, receiving awards, being recognized for her contributions to sustainable development. My daughter graduating from university with honors, standing beside Victoria and the billionaire, who has become the father figure she deserves. They look happy, genuinely, authentically happy. The kind of happiness that doesn't require me. That's the hardest part. Not that I lost them, but that they didn't need me to win. They thrived without me. They became better, stronger, more extraordinary in my absence. All the ways I convinced myself that I was essential, all the ways I justified my ego, none of it mattered. The world kept turning, their lives kept improving, and I became irrelevant. I stand here now, looking back at the man I was, and I barely recognize him. That man thought success meant he deserved everything he wanted. He thought love was something that should revolve around him. He thought his needs were more important than his responsibilities. He was wrong about everything that mattered. Karma didn't punish me. Consequences did. Natural, inevitable consequences of choosing emptiness over fullness, illusion over reality, myself over everyone who believed in me. I got exactly what I chose. Nothing. Nobody. A life where I'm watching from a distance as the people I love become extraordinary without me. If there's anything I want you to take from this story, it's this. The people we betray don't need our redemption to become whole. The women we abandon don't need our apology to build empires. The children we walk away from don't need us to love their mother. They'll be fine. More than fine. They'll thrive. The only person my choices destroyed was me. I thought I was choosing happiness. I was choosing erasure. I thought I was finding myself. I was losing myself. I thought I was escaping responsibility. I was becoming nobody. And the cruelest twist of all? Watching the woman I abandoned become everything I ever dreamed of being, knowing that I could have been part of that journey, that I could have stood beside her and lifted her up, and instead, I chose to tear her down. That's a weight I'll carry for the rest of my life. The woman I loved didn't need to destroy me. I did that myself. I handed her the greatest victory simply by stepping aside and revealing who I truly was. And she rose. God, how she rose. Without me. Despite me. In complete defiance of my absence. That's karma. Not punishment. Just truth. You reap what you sow, and I sowed betrayal, selfishness, and lies. So I'm reaping a life of solitude, irrelevance, and the constant ache of knowing what I threw away. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, I'm begging you, choose differently. Choose the person who believes in you. Choose the family you created. Choose the life that's real over the fantasy that's calling to you. Because one day, you'll be standing where I'm standing, watching the people you loved become extraordinary without you. And you'll understand that some losses can never be recovered. Like this video if you understand the power of consequences. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And subscribe because next week I'm telling another story that will remind you that karma has a way of exposing the truth. You won't believe how justice actually works in real life. Thanks for watching.